Hello, podcast world, fellow horticulturists, lovers of plants, gardeners, family, and friends. Welcome to Shrubby Buddies, the podcast, friends with woodies for garden goodies. I'm host Matt Guthrie.
And I'm host Tim Fleischer. Coming at you from Central Ohio, Zone 6B. We're just a couple of public horticulturists and certified arborists with experience in education, landscape design, gardening, retail, and wholesale.
So grab a drink, polish your pruners, dust off that kneeling pad, and let's get down to business. Welcome back, Shrubby Buddies, to Shrubby Buddies podcast. I'm Matt with two things. Timmy over here, Timothy Daniel Fleischer to my right.
Good morning.
How are you? Good morning. Bro, it's 7 o'clock.
Well, perhaps our listeners are scrambling to listen first thing when the episode drops.
Yeah, so good morning to the people on the other side of the world.
Bacon and eggs.
I love your shirt.
Thank you.
It's a rainbow maple leaf that says Tim's because it is your shirt. What's so funny about that?
I don't know.
Okay, so... All right, Timmy, what's new in your world that you want to share with these listeners? How about you share with them that little story you were telling me earlier about what you heard on the radio?
Yeah, so I was driving the girls. My wife had to work today. We're recording on Sunday. My wife had to work today, and so I took the girls putt-putting, miniature golf, whatever you want to call it. And I was listening to the radio on the way in, and there was a nice news story that came on about sweet corn in Colorado. And there's a certain area of Colorado and a certain type of sweet corn they're growing that is struggling because these worms, and I think they're technically the larva of this moth, is infecting the corn.
Okay.
It still tastes the same, but would they open them up and the ears are missing tons of kernels.
Yeah.
So they're ending up having to ship it off and sell it for animal feed and stuff. It's not going to, the markets for, human consumption because it just doesn't look right. And scientists have started a program where they're giving the moths STDs. Sexually transmitted diseases. This is how they worded it. So the moths get STDs, and when they mate, I guess what happens is they all become infertile. So they can't reproduce, and hopefully this helps the population of these moths who lay these eggs, and then the larva can't exist to infect the corn.
So the things that eat these moths then get the STDs, or I don't know how that works exactly, or is it?
I don't know.
I mean, I guess you're
going to have to ask the scientists. They didn't. It was a 3-minute story on the news this morning, so it wasn't like they went into too much depth. But I would suppose I would hope they've given that some thought.
Yeah, I would sure hope so.
Yeah. I hope that if any of these moths get into somebody's house or something, and they maybe their cat chases the moth and eats it, doesn't
get syphilis.
Yeah. Although most people's house cats are spayed and neutered, so, and that's what these STDs do. They just render the moths infertile. So,
so whatever.
Pretty cool stuff. Science is cool.
Hashtag science.
There's a little horticulture, agriculture type story I heard this morning that, had my ear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that all that you've got to share?
That's all I've got for the week. How about you, Matt?
It's been kind of a quiet week for me as well. The weather's nice. It's perfect. Highs in the 70s, lows in the 50s at night. No humidity. I'm here for it. Days are getting shorter, noticeably shorter.
Noticeably.
So, I'm ready for fall. I'm ready for football season. I'm ready for some fall planting. I'm ready to not have swamp ass every single day. I'm out working, so...
Yeah, I don't know what it's like in other parts of this country, but if you're an Ohio listener, you know what we're talking about. It was kind of the perfect day this weekend, the perfect weather this weekend. It couldn't get much better.
I know like the East Coast has been like underwater, obviously because of the hurricane, but like legit a shitload of rain, like 20 inches of rain in some places, which is just nutty to think about.
Yeah, if a few weeks ago we interviewed Brie Arthur, and if you've started following her, you've seen that she keeps showing her rain gauge, and it's just like 2 inches, 3 inches, 5 inches. So, she had some sun the other day I saw, but yeah, she's gotten a shitload of rain.
I would say so.
Send some our way.
Yeah, please. That's just it. Is we're still dry here in Central Ohio, but it's cooler. So
yeah,
I guess when we water, things aren't drying out as fast, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So
although if it's real windy, that sucks the moisture right out of them.
Oh yeah. So yeah, not a whole lot going on in our world with anything right now because we live boring lives, but we are here. We are talking to you, our listeners.
What are we talking about today, Matt?
Today's title is Summer 2024, an Annual Affair. So we're going to we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about some annuals that we're using this year that we really like, that are doing well. There may be a few on there that we aren't necessarily using this year, but we have experience with them from past years, using them in planters and things. I know you were like real gung-ho and wanting to talk about what you were using for 2024.
I didn't want to lie to the people.
Yeah, so I think I threw a couple on there that I've used in the past that I just felt like mentioning to everybody. So yeah, we're just going to dive right into this, talk about annuals. Just a full disclosure on this. Don't go out and try and buy this stuff right now. We're talking summer annuals. Whoop, I just hit the mic stand if you heard that. Sorry. Hopefully
Matt banged his mic. We'll see what happened. We'll see what the edits do for that.
Yeah, probably not much, but we'll see. Anyways, yeah, so these are for summer annuals. So be thinking about this, taking notes, revisit this podcast in spring of 2025 when you're thinking like bedding annuals or hanging baskets or porch pots or whatever it may be. We'll revisit this talk also, probably next spring. But we just felt like talking about annuals because they're fresh on our mind, and we love annuals, and they're colorful.
That's right. I figured if we waited till May, we might kind of forget what things we really had success with. So as these annuals have peaked and started to taper off, it's fresh on our minds. So we want to share with you what we really loved from summer of 2024. And so just a little primer here, just to get everyone's brains working. Annuals, for us here in Ohio, when we say annuals, we're talking about plants that can't survive hard freezes or hard frosts. So they're things that we often plant in around May, and they bloom all summer long, and then about the time of our first frost in the fall, they're done. The tops die down, the roots die, everything dies, and we plant these for just a ton of summer color because they bloom all season long. Yeah, and if you don't know, like when we talk about annual and we talk about perennial, annual meaning 1 year, a one and done plant, perennial meaning that they come back every year. So just a little rundown for anybody that may not know what an annual is. So you plant it this year, it's going to die on you this year. So. And they come in all sizes and forms. We use a lot of tropical plants in our annual displays, and we may overwinter them in a greenhouse or something, but it's still an annual. If we were to leave them out, they would not come back the following year.
Correct.
So
perfect.
So that's a little bit about annuals. We're in zone 6B, so annuals are going to be different. 6B for everybody. So there's things that maybe if you're listening from down south, you're like, well, that's not an annual. Well, for us it is.
No shit, Sherlock. You live in the South. But for us it is.
I think the big one I always think of is like lantana, because lantana is an annual for us, but it's a shrub. It's actually gets woody stems and can be a pretty big plant in different parts of this country. But here it is not. It's a little bushy annual. So
yeah, and you mentioned tropicals. I use tropical plants. I want to, take credit on getting us to use some tropicals at the city. I don't think we had ever really done that before, where we had really gone in and actually bought like foliage tropical plants that would traditionally be used as a house plant. But snake plant being one of them that we use, Sansevieria. So here, obviously, if you left it out all winter, it's going to die on you. So you would want to bring that in and overwinter it inside the house. Perfect, because it's a house plant. But, I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say that it's actually like semi-invasive in Florida, like because it does spread by rhizomes and it will like take areas over. So they're like, don't plant the snake plant in your landscape as a landscape plant, far south for that reason.
So yeah, if you're much further south than us, think about those types of things as we're going through this, because something like that is not a concern here.
Yeah, and like your I haven't used Monstera, but like some of the Monsteras will stay a decent size in your house, but down south in Florida in the right conditions, like, or any place tropical, like these things are massive plants, huge vining plants that will really consume a lot of area. So if you're down south,
Good to know. Check out your hardiness zone and make sure that things aren't invasive before you go ahead and use them.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's dive into this. We touched on tropical, so we won't go back to that. I use them. You use them. We use some foliage plants as like centerpieces and displays, like the snake plants, and we've used ZZ plants and
variegated ginger,
and we'll even throw the alocasias and the colocaceas in there. Although those are probably more frequently used as annuals, and you can dig those tubers up if you want to at the end of the year. Bring them in and overwinter them, similar to how you would like a dahlia bulb or something, or a canna bulb, something like that. But so think tropical plants as annuals. I like to use the snake plant as like exclamation points that just kind of like shoot straight up out of the annual display. And I don't know, I think it adds a really cool touch to the display. So.
Let's jump into some of these more floriferous annuals that we have on our list here.
Hit it off, bub.
I get to start?
Yes, I want you to start.
Oh my goodness. Which one do I want to pick to talk about first? I did mention lantana, so we'll just start with lantana.
Mm-hmm.
It's been one of our favorite annuals for a while now, because it's probably one of the most, if not the most, drought tolerant annuals.
Dude. I feel like with lantana, the less water you give it and the more heat you give it and sun, the better it does.
Yeah, it's kind of like your peppers in your garden. Like, they really get going when it gets hot and when it's dry. And that's how lantana is. And it comes in a myriad of colors, but the one that we're earmarking today is the cultivar called Pot of Gold, which is it's a golden yellow lantana. Just when it's flowering at its peak, it's got so many blooms that you can't hardly see the foliage. And sometimes that's what you're looking for. You need, you're seeing this from a distance. It's really going to make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, lantana comes in a lot of different colors, but this golden yellow one is the one that we were loving this year.
Yeah, this year, absolutely. We used it at the Dutch Mill greenhouse, and it is just baller right now in the parking lot, like kind of island bed. And so if any of my Dutch Mill people are listening to this, send me a pic of it. Maybe we can throw it up on the gram for the listeners. But with the lantana, what I think pairs nice with it, and I know you've used it in some containers, and we used it there at Dutch Mill also, is, although I don't know that we used this particular one at Dutch Mill, but is the Angelonia Angel Face.
The Angel Face is a series of the Angelonia that is the larger. It's a taller. It's like 2.5 feet tall Angelonia, whereas some of the other series like Archangel are going to be more in the 14 to 16 range, but
still very similar plants.
Similar plant, but this is a taller one. And go ahead with Angelonia.
It comes in a lot of different colors. You can get the whites, the pinks, the purples, reds. I'm trying to think of what else.
Yeah, like cherry magenta red. Then they have a lot of blues, although they're blue. The blue Angelonias come off as more purple to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to get. I mean, there are some like what I would consider true blue annuals, but they're far and few between. So a lot of times, these growers are calling some of their purples blues, which is fine. But yeah, and they even have like some bicolor ones too now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just a great sturdy plant. Does really well in drought type conditions. Doesn't require a ton of watering or anything. Just water as needed. Hit it with some fertilizer, and it's just kind of a no-fuss plant. Give it some time, though. Same with the lantana. Like with these guys, they really turn it on like in the summertime. So if you plant them in May and it just seems like you're coming into mid-June and these things just aren't like doing it for you yet, like give them a little time, because I've just noticed like when it starts to get hot and dry and you get those hot, sunny, humid days, that's when they just explode. So,
and that's why they go so well together, because they both have the same watering needs, which isn't much, and they both start blasting off at the same time. So you've got this spike of bright Angelonia coming out of this, mounding planting of lantana. So it creates a really nice colorful effect, and they both come in a lot of colors, so you can really play around with color schemes with the two of those.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one that I want to mention, I want to make sure that I get to talk about today is Alternathera, which is, I don't know the common name for Alternathera. We'll put these on the Instagram. We can look those up. But it is, for me, something I've been using a lot in place of sweet potato vine. Nothing wrong with sweet potato vine. It does a great job spilling over planters and creating that cascading effect. But I find that sweet potato vine gets really long and stringy and requires a lot of trimming back, right? Like,
yeah,
you get in there and you trim, and a few days later you're like, man, I just trimmed that, and it's already cascading way further than I want it to. I like the Alternathera because it's a foliage plant like the sweet potato vine. We're not growing it for the blooms. It comes in a lot of colors like the sweet potato vine, but it just kind of like cascades just over the edge of the pot, and it stays super bushy. So
I like how it almost like bobs and leaves through stuff too when you plant it with things. Say you had it planted with like some petunias or something, like it kind of finds its way through that, but it's not so much that it overpowers the other plant.
It doesn't have
like a nice accent.
It doesn't have those giant leaves of the sweet potato vine, so it doesn't kind of cover things up. And the two this year, I've used a bunch of these, but the two this year that I've loved are Brazilian Red Hots, which it's kind of like a maroon leaf with these pink streaks in it, and I had this, like Matt was saying, weaving through some lantana in the, like I had these in the ground, and just created a really nice bright effect. The other one I've been liking this year is Red Threads, and it has really slender, thin leaves that are really dark red, and they just helped set off those whites and those silvers, and I really like how that one's behaving for me this year. So definitely Alternathera as a good substitute for sweet potato vine.
Yeah.
If you're not looking for something as aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm seeing here on the interwebs is Alternathera is sometimes called Joseph's Coat or Creeping Copperleaf. So
I've heard Joseph's Coat.
Joseph's Coat. Yeah, if you go to the greenhouse and you can't remember Alternathera, just remember about old Joseph's Coat.
Lots more cultivars that we didn't cover, so just discover them.
Yeah, Google this, like Google Alternathera and just look at some of the different ones. So with that, I'm looking at our list here. Which one do I want to talk about? Can I go on like a little begonia tangent and talk about several begonias?
I want that.
And I want you to
I want that hard.
I want you to interject on this, because I know that you're starting to love on some begonias too.
I've always loved some begonias.
I know you have.
Back to my OPGC days. Shout out OPGC.
All them little teeny tiny seeds, begonia seeds you had to count and sort and clean.
Begonia seeds have the consistency of flour. Like a begonia seed is like the size of a grain of flour.
I know, it's nuts.
So
anyhow, all right, so cool. I'm looking down the list right now. The first one we come to is the Gryphon begonia. foliage plant. You're not going to get like flowering with this, but it's just these giant star-like leaves that just shoot up and out of stuff, and they're like burgundy with just this silver veining through them, and they look like metallic, and super cool plant. Used as an accent plant with some other things. It'll really help set off like some of the different...
Great in the shade.
Yeah, it's a great shade plant. Some of the different like other begonias that you may have planted with it. So I have planted with some. I have some that's kind of like blown up through some alocasia, and it's paired up with some of the begonia bolivensis, which is sometimes referred to as like a waterfall begonia. So it's that one that's kind of got those trumpet-shaped flowers. You can get them in like oranges, yellows, pinks, reds, whites. A lot of times you see them in hanging baskets, but they're the ones that kind of like spill over like a waterfall. So that's a good one. The begonia bolivensis, another shade plant. Let's see, what else do we got on here? I've got angel wings begonia, but I think what I meant to put for that was the dragon wings begonia. Is just kind of a good... I use them in pots. I've used them as like bedding annuals. Just a really good, big, kind of shrubby begonia that will take up some space, but does really well in the shade.
Those dragon wings are really good for hanging baskets too, especially if you just want to keep things like real simple and classy.
Mm-hmm.
Just using them, they can be by themselves.
Yeah.
So
the begonias, I went over a few. Angel wings, I think, are the ones that you see as houseplants that have the dotted leaves on them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're a little bit more delicate, but hey, I say use them. Use them as an annual. I think I may, because they're super cool. We saw a lot of different ones at the Biltmore house a couple weeks ago.
And I'm starting to see a lot of begonias at the local garden centers.
Mm-hmm.
They're those kind of plants that are in pretty high demand, because a lot of people have some planters tucked up on a porch and it's in full shade, and begonias fit that bill. And there's all these really unique cultivars now. And I've noticed that, the good ones sell out fast. So know when your garden center restocks and be there that day.
Yeah, so I just went over a couple. Some that you may look into would be like the Rex series, begonia. So with some of those, like the Gryphons and the Rex series, you're really just buying it for the foliage.
Mm-hmm.
The color of the foliage, the texture of the foliage, the size of the foliage in some cases, whereas the waterfall begonia and the dragonwing begonias, you're buying that more for the flower. So you're going to get like the bright flowers, flower all summer. They're self-cleaning. You don't have to do anything with them. Just water them and give them some shade. They're pretty much a no-fuss plant, I would say.
Yeah, I'm all for self-cleaning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Clean yourself up. So while we're on shade, because begonias, there's some that can take more sun than others, but for the most part, you're using these in shade, and they fit that niche really well. I'm going to mention Chrysandra and the cultivar Orange Marmalade. Again, I don't know the common name on the Chrysandra, but I've been using this the last couple years. My wife introduced me to this.
Thank you, Megan.
She had it planted in our back, like in full shade, and it was just gorgeous. And I've used it in sun and shade. So what's unique about this plant is the amazing bright orange flowers you get with the cultivar Orange Marmalade. Really true orange, a true bright orange, glossy, very glossy leaves. In fact, it has a very houseplanty feel to it. And I believe that it can be a good option for houseplant if you've got some light, I've read. But I love to use this plant for some bright orange in a shadier area. So it loves that dappled sun. But I've also grown it and I am actually currently growing it in full sun, and it's doing well, although I think that having it get some more shade is best. But Chrysandra Orange Marmalade.
Yeah, you're going to love the common name for it, too.
Am I?
You ready for this?
Tell me it.
Common name is firecracker flower. Isn't that nice? Or firecracker plant.
Love it. And it is all that. So check out Chrysandra Orange Marmalade. Again, I'm seeing it at garden centers. It's there. We're not going to tell you anything you can't find. So check that one out.
Yeah.
For some bright color and some shade.
Sweet. Do we want to keep going with like some shade stuff here? Because there's still some on here.
Yeah,
let's just bust out the coleus.
Oh, okay.
So coleus in recent years have just like taken the annual world by storm. I feel like I see more and more of it. More people using it. There again, you're not growing this for the flower. You're growing this strictly for the foliage colors.
In fact, when it does bloom, you're pinching it off.
Yeah,
if you're not pinching your coleus flowers, you're a psychopath.
Correct. Yeah, you got to pinch off that stupid purple flower that it gets. But so we have Coleus wasabi, which is, I've got some that are like 3 foot tall or taller in some annual displays. I plant everything super close, which is part of the problem, but it can take full sun. In the full sun, it's going to be like a much more yellow, almost a washed out yellow.
Mm-hmm.
If you plant it in the full on shade, it's going to be more of a green. But if you get that kind of happy place where maybe it's just getting morning sun and afternoon shade, it's just going to be this real pretty lime chartreuse colored foliage that's got these like serrated edges, these scalloped edges on it. Fantastic plant. Good for really brightening up kind of a shaded area.
I do love the coleus that have chartreuse leaves, and this wasabi takes it to the next level because it's those chartreuse leaves plus the scalloped edge.
Yeah.
So you get the texture there too.
Yeah, and there's some other chartreusey colored leaves. Wasabi is what we're using this year. Lime time is one. I think lime time's a proven winner. What's another? I know there's another one that's got even like a little bit of yellow in the leaves, but I cannot for the life of me remember.
Those are the two big chartreuse.
Yeah, lime time and wasabi.
With the big bold foliage.
Yeah.
You have to remember here when you're doing an annual display, you're going to have a lot of blooms, right? But there's going to be every plant's going to have that green foliage associated with it. So dotting in or packing in these foliage plants is really important to kind of like cut that green.
Yeah.
And that's what coleus does really well.
It keeps going. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's what I had to say. It just kind of breaks up all that green foliage and really helps the colorful blooms pop.
Yeah, and I will say too with coleus, like even if you aren't planting it with other flowers, like I've used it in pots where it is strictly coleus, and it's like a lot of different ones. The greens. You have on here coleus rustic orange. So you can get these oranges and these copper colors. You can get some with like that's burgundy with green veining through it. I think there's one that's called like fishnut stockings that I've used that is kind of that way. It's a really pretty coleus. But yeah, and just planting all of those kind of intermixed together, it's super cool with all of these different foliage colors. And I don't know. So I don't know where I was going with that.
No,
I just got excited about coleus.
You have to, especially if it's a larger display or you've got a very contained pot that can only do so much, having that foliage color to break up that green is so important. So, and you mentioned the rustic orange one. I used that one this year for the first time. It's the truest orange one that I've used. So I've used a lot that are like a reddish orange. These are orange, and they're orange in the shade, and they're orange in the sun. So I've really liked that cultivar this year. Yeah. Definitely going to use that again.
So wasabi and rustic orange are the two that we have down. But, do your research on the coleus. Like, Google coleus, go to Proven Winners website, go to Ball Seeds website. Look around and see what you like, because there are so many different coleus cultivars out there. So
perfect. Let's move away from the. I still see one or two, but let's move away from that and just go with something a little bit different and talk about some salvias.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You like that?
Yeah, go for it.
So we've talked about salvia a lot on this podcast, and that's the perennial salvias that we've liked, but. Salvia is a really dynamic genus. It's a big genus.
It really is.
Of plants. And I love annual salvias. I've found myself working away from the black and blooms and the black and blues and moving into some of these brighter ones, if you will.
So in my opinion, like I'm glad to see you moving away from those, because in my opinion, they just get lost very easily. In a planter or
they're
in a
great.
flower display.
They're great if you've got if the goal is you're right on top of that planter or that display and you're looking at it. But if you're zooming by or you're looking at it from a distance, they kind of get lost. Now, I will say not the only, but one of the redeeming qualities is the hummingbird presence on those black and blooms is fantastic.
Yeah.
But in the same vein is the Roman red, which is a lot like those black and blooms. But it's a red, and it's one of the truest red annual salvias that I've seen. And I wanted to talk about it because it's a hummingbird magnet. Hummers love it.
Oh,
do you like a good hummer on your salvia?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
who doesn't?
Do you have them in those pots down at Riverside Crossing?
I do, and they're in those bowls.
And the hummingbirds just smash those bowls.
And they're giant. They're one of the taller ones that I've found as far as salvias goes, and they just pop out of every area, and they're just like they're suspended like 15, 18 inches higher than everything else. Just getting visited by the hummers. They're just dive bombing that.
And that's Roman
red.
Roman Niemeyer Red Rocket.
Shout out to Roman. That I work with a gentleman named, is he gentle? Yes, he is.
He is.
Roman, and
he has this like hard ass persona, but you get to know him, and he's just a big teddy bear.
He's a soft batch in a good way.
Yeah, so we call him Roman Red, Roman Around, Roman Empire, Roman Candle.
Roman numeral,
just everything.
So a little shout out to Roman.
Yeah.
And I know he's going to listen to this, but
one more week and he's off to college, dude.
He's back to college.
Back to college, yeah.
UC,
that's sad. That's sad. He's a good one.
Down south there in Cincinnati. But the other one I've used out on the plaza there is the Mystic Spires, and it was a first year for me, and it's in the same color palette as the black and blue and black and blooms, but you know which one I'm talking about. It sends up these giant, like, corn doggy looking things full of those blue flowers.
Oh, yeah.
And the bees love it, and it never stops blooming, and you can see them from far away, and you don't see the foliage. Just the blooms are just poking out of every corner of that pot. So Mystic Spires is the one that I'm in love with this year.
Awesome sauce.
Yeah.
Mystic Spires and Roman Red Rocket. And we're just going to stick with the Mystic theme, and we're just going to bump right into Mystic Illusion Dahlia. So the Mystic Illusion Dahlia, you have more experience with it than I do. You can get there's several different colors in that series, right? Like orange, yellow is the one that we've used the most.
Orange, pink, red.
Yeah. But it's just these dahlias that they don't set those massive dinner plate flowers that a lot of people associate with dahlias.
And they're not double flowers.
They're not
single flowers.
Yeah, single flowers. But they just set these very bright, bold single flowers that sit up above just like a dark burgundy foliage.
Almost black
foliage. And the stems are almost black. And it's the contrast of the black to these bright flowers. We use yellow because the black and the yellow just it really makes that yellow pop on those things. But I know you've got more experience with them, so I'll let you kind of dive into them a little bit more.
Well, I've been using them in the ground for a while, and this year I've stuck them in planters as kind of the just like the big bold plant in my planters, and they have outperformed what I've expected. And it's a big flower. It's probably 4 inches across, sitting on top of this black foliage. And if you're not familiar with dahlias, they're one of those collector type plants. They're kind of like hostas, where there's just like tons of different cultivars, and they come in all shapes and sizes and colors. But this is one that's been consistently performing well for us.
Yeah.
And just really has a nice contrast to it.
And you can dig these up too and overwinter them inside like you do other dahlias, and divide them up and give them to friends and share with your neighbors. So
absolutely.
Yeah, check out the Mystic Illusion Dahlias.
Yep.
Perfect. So we're going to have to start. God, we have a massive list, listeners, and we're already sitting at like 34 minutes, so we don't want to take up too much of your time. I know some of the past episodes have been a little bit longer, so we're going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter. So let's just go over rapid fire maybe a couple of them here real quick.
Yeah, just start picking out some of your favorites on our list.
Yeah, so one that we are using this year and we have used in the past and is a go-to for us is Gomphrena. So a couple that we have here is the Trufula Pink and the Ping Pong Purple, as well as the Cosmic Flare. The Cosmic Flare is going to be very similar to the Trufula Pink, but with chartreuse-colored foliage rather than green. But they just form this kind of bushy green foliage plant that shoot off these little ping pong shaped purple flowers or pink flowers, depending on the cultivar.
They're just like little balls.
Yeah, and they just kind of dance up in the air. I've used it in conjunction with coleus, where I've planted in and around coleus. The coleus foliage kind of hides the foliage of the Gomphrena, and all you see then are these little ping pong balls that are just kind of floating in the air above everything. So you could use it as kind of like a filler plant to get that like kind of punch through effect. It's not going to be the main attraction of the planting, but it's going to be a great like filler or what's the word I'm looking for? Like accent plant to a lot of other
little
things.
Tickler, just
a
tickling
tickler,
up.
Yeah,
right.
It's going to tickle up through. So Gomphrena, check it out.
Can I go a little old school here?
I want you to go old school. I know where you're going with this.
Yeah,
yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to go with the African marigolds. So marigolds is one of those things that you might consider a grandma plant, or you only use them to keep rabbits out of your garden or something you heard like that. But the African marigolds, specifically the Big Duck series, Big Duck. Don't get me confused here. I said duck. Big Duck series. Big Duck Gold, Big Duck Yellow, Big Duck Orange. Those are the ones I was using this year. They have just big, big flowers, and they're like the size of a racquetball, but kind of smushed a little, right? So they're kind of, they're not perfectly round, but they're very roundish. It's a great plant. I mean, kind of like a little bit more work. They appreciate some deadheading. So, because once those big ass flowers start to turn brown, they're ugly. So you want to pinch those off. But gosh, talk about a plant that is a great drive-by plant, something that you're going to see from a distance that's really bright. And it's great to have those yellows and oranges to set off some of those purples, pinks, and blues. So,
yeah, those like opposite colors.
So the big Duck series, marigolds.
Yeah, so what, maybe use those like in a porch pot or like in a window box or something where you're going to have easier access and there's not going to be as many of them.
Mm-hmm.
If you had them in a mass planting, fantastic, but it's just going to be more work for the deadheading. So,
Sure.
So for a home gardener, that would be a great option for a big, bold, bright flower to use in your porch pots.
There's a white one too. I didn't mention the white one. I haven't used it, but I plan to at some point.
Yeah. And then let's do two more here. I'm just going to hit on petunias because why not? We're talking old school here. So just your good old petunias, they've come a long way from your traditional bedding petunias. You can still get those, but they had the Wave series that was this low growing creeping type thing. And now they have like these tidal wave type series that are big kind of mounding and creeping. We use two that we've used is like the Durabloom Blue Vein. And I want to say that that's a proven winner, if I'm not mistaken. It's funny because a lot of what proven winner has, like Ball Seed has almost the identical. It's just called something different. But Durabloom Blue Vein is like a really dark purple, inside with the dark purple veining. And then it's just got this like soft lilac purple flower that
took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. And then another one that we have is Bubblegum because why not? I feel like that's just a tried and true petunia. It's just bold. It's bright. It's just neon pink. And it really just sets off a garden. So
yeah, there was a time when I hated petunias, and I still don't, love them to the extent that I love some of these. But bubblegum is one of those ones that I've had no issues with.
Zero issues, yeah. And what's nice about petunias is when they start to look ratty, kind of in the summer. If you think like, this thing's just not looking all that great, like don't be afraid to cut that thing back.
It's hard to do, I know, to like trim them back, but they grow so quick, and it just gives them like a rejuve.
Yeah, shear them back, fertilize them, and then give them a week or two.
Yeah, and real quick, the Pechoa Sunset Orange, which is a hybrid between the petunia and the calibrachoa, which you might know that as like the real mini petunia.
Or
Million
bells. Million bells petunia.
Yeah, so it's a hybrid of the two, but it's a really nice true orange one. So Pachoa Sunset Orange has been banging for me this year, and I haven't cut it back.
Yeah.
Like I haven't done any cutting back. It's just like taking good care of itself.
Yeah, perfect.
So,
yeah, and I mean, you don't have to do that, but I know with some of the petunias especially, they just get so big and they get leggy and tired.
But this one hasn't. So
yeah.
I haven't cut it back yet.
So just cut them back and fertilize them.
And I may not.
Yeah. So, Tim, I mean, we didn't get through the entire list, but I feel like we got through enough. And like I said, we're going to revisit this, people. Maybe early spring of next year. We'll do maybe this winter we'll do an annual talk on early season annuals, and then in April we'll do a talk on the summer annuals, for 2025.
Yeah, I mean, we plan on doing this podcast as long as you'll still listen to Infinity and Beyond. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about annuals. Yeah. So I think it's okay not to turn this into a 2-part and just cut it there.
We're just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
So give you all something to chew on between now and next year.
Gnaw on that a little bit.
If you have any questions about anything that we talked about, feel free to reach out to us, shrubbybuddies@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram. At some point, we would love to have a website that we can put more of this stuff onto. And I mean, in my brain, I want to create a Shrubby Buddy type community, so it's not just a podcast, but it's like a community for plant lovers of all different types, whether you be beginner to expert, just a place for everyone to get together and share knowledge and just have a good time with plants.
I love every bit of that.
Yeah. So anyways, that kind of wraps it up for this week.
We hope you enjoyed hearing about some of the annuals that we love this year. Little love affair.
Yeah. And moth STDs. So awesome, people. Well, hey, have a wonderful week, and we look forward to doing this next week for you. Don't know what we're going to do yet. It'll be a surprise, I suppose, for me as well. So anyways, have a good week. Be safe. Stay cool.
Do not fornicate with moths.
And yeah, please don't.
And we love you harder.
+2.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.